incubator that you set up in Silicon Valley. And what else is happening? By the way, this is being live streamed on the YouTube channel for TiE Bangalore. Over to you, Dirk.
Well, fantastic, Sandhya. Thank you so much for these words, and warmest greetings from, actually cold greetings from Germany. Here I am, just before Arman introduces me, I'm originally from Germany. I spent the last 15 years in Silicon Valley, and I'm calling you right now from the Technical University in Dortmund, which is one of the universities you might be aware of. Certainly Dortmund is not only known for a good data-based and research university, also for football. So that's what I see here also in the near distance. I'm very happy to give you today some new, maybe different insights, what you have so far heard and learned, experienced about the common use of blockchains. And my objective for today is not to actually sell you a product or whatever, but basically give you an overview what CryptoWorks is doing. And we do make CryptoWorks technology available for educational purposes for free, but also we make it, of course, provided to partners in order to actually do something which we believe is a very, very important function of providing trust in data. So my presentation today is called a universal ledger for proof of data authenticity. In this title that you read, the most important word there is universal, right? Because we will all learn that we have by now various distributed ledger, various blockchains, but I will try to bring some lights to what I mean by universal. In regard to, oops, I'm just a second. So I assume you see my screen, yeah? Please, otherwise, interrupt me.
No, we can see your screen.
Okay, got it.
I'll just check before you start with your presentation. Anand, you should be unmuted by now. If you can, if you want to kind of try speaking, feel free.
You hear me? Sandhya,
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've switched on the camera too, and I was obviously, since I was muted, I couldn't say that I'm here, right? So, but I don't want to stop the thread of what Dirk has started. So let him go ahead. And nice to see you, Dirk, and thank you for the opportunity to hear you.
Yes. So let me just. So what you see here is a team of people. As I said, I'm originally from Germany, but spent the last 15 years in the Bay Area. I'm a co-founder of CryptoWorks, which I co-founded with a good friend of mine who is a professor for blockchain also at the UC Berkeley, and has been also in his young ages a professor in Germany. So this is basically the core team. Holger currently is on the West Coast. I'm here in Germany right now. And it gives you a little bit of an overview. We are still a small team, about just above 10 people, but have gotten and received great support from some people, which I mentioned here briefly on the right side. The head of the European Investment Bank, they use CryptoWorks technology for defining data evidence in investigations, or the new CTO of Commerzbank, actually on a global basis, is also, they're using our software. So, but again, we are not a big corporation. We are a small technology provider. We actually are a platform. We do not build applications. So just that you see in a context who we are, and that you will see also at the end of my presentations. We are very keen and look for collaboration partners who actually are doing actual real market application work for us. Okay, so if you look at the current state of the market in fintech, but also in other verticals, blockchains have become more and more mainstream, as we know. They're used by corporations in multiple functions, and a lot of people, when you read in the internet, they will tell you that it has come out of this hype cycle, and we do see now real applications for blockchain technology in the market. The objective, of course, is usually that to make sure that data, original data, are trusted. And most blockchain applications and new developments actually result in that you actually put data very often on the blockchains. That makes a lot of sense in multiple applications. In others, it does not. Today, I will tell you where reasons why how trust in data can be established without putting original data on the blockchains. So, and use blockchains only for data verification purposes and data immutability purposes. However, in general, we all know that there are remaining challenges which are addressed to new blockchains. I think probably every month we see new different blockchains coming up, and let's see what is coming out of India or what's coming out of MIT or Berkeley. There will be always new consensus algorithms driven to overcome some of the continuous problems. One, of course, is compliance. Very often you will read about the scalability problem. There is an interoperability problem, lack of standardization. What I mean by that is not every blockchain is actually accepted, what I would call in the old world, right? The new world, as technology enthusiasts, we do understand the principles, we do understand the technology behind blockchain, but very often the old world, the old financial world, is actually still lacking, that there is not really a standard developed. And of course, we continue to work for more education and awareness. What are the different use cases for blockchains? How can they be easily implemented? What are the pitfalls? What are the downsides? I like to add one point, at least in Germany, what I know a bit better, there is a strong lack of blockchain experienced engineers, developers. It's actually pretty difficult to actually get any specific application implemented in a larger use case, because very often there is simply a lack of knowledge and know-how. Our vision as a CryptoWork company is basically, we would like to create a world where you can universally trust and prove all data on a global basis. There are two important words I like to highlight in that vision: universally again, and global basis, right? What you actually still find right now, that blockchains have made their niche, their acceptance in specific use cases. So a specific blockchain is specifically used for one application. That is not yet a global, universally trusted solution. To give you a very concrete and simple example, contractual agreement of data between China, Russia, the Western world, India, is still an issue. We have different sources of trust in these various political jurisdictions. And that, of course, is something which is not decreasing. That distrust in the world has actually probably more increased over the last periods. What we are doing is we provide a powerful solution for making sure that data authenticity and integrity and protection against manipulation and fraud is actually established, independent of one specific blockchain. So I will explain you later on a bit how we do this, but basically, of course, we have what we call a reality seal, which is something like a notary seal for each data, which you can share, which you can save, which you can store, which is actually a representation of the linkage of the original data to multiple blockchains. Could be certainly more than one. It could be 25 blockchains. It could be even something like a central server by the SEC or whatever. I will explain that a bit later. So what is actually the evolving problem here we are facing? We have, of course, an explosion of generated and especially of shared data, and a question arising, how do we actually trust these shared data? But of course, as we all know, global business transactions do need to rely on trusted data. The word trusted data is, however, relative. You have trust among trusted parties, where you basically want to make sure that each of the one, from a processing point of view, rely on the same data, but you basically trust each other. There is something completely different if you need to make sure and prove to a non-trusted party, to a government, to a regulator, to a different state, that these parties, that these data you are processing have not been changed. And this is one of the things what we are trying to address. So, of course, especially in regulated environments, this is of critical importance. And as I also mentioned, while blockchains and DLTs are on the rise, there is not yet, and in our hypothesis, not in the near future, probably one could say never, one single blockchain which is globally accepted by various jurisdictions, various legal systems, various regulators or governments. So if that is this is the world we are trying to navigate here. Our solution, a little bit lengthy here, but let me go through it. Basically, we offer an API. In simple words, the API connects original data on a massive scale. It could be hundreds, it could be data flows like Visa transactions, 100,000 of transactions per second. We link these original data to underlying blockchains, public blockchains. As you know, usually public blockchains have transaction costs. They are increasing, they are fluctuating, but usually in order to connect data to public blockchains, you need to have a number of things. You need to have their currency. You need to have, of course, know-how in your organization. And you need to actually make sure that if you do that on high frequency, high speeds, that you match the underlying heartbeat which is specific to every underlying blockchain. It's different on Bitcoin, it's different on Ethereum, it's different on EOS, on other blockchains. We connect these original data to all of these blockchains, where the customer selects which blockchain he wants to start with, and he can add, subtract blockchains. I continue. So the way we do this, I will explain in a second, because that sounds a little bit magic, that you do not need to have blockchain know-how, that you do not need to pay for the transactions on the blockchains directly. So how does that all work? But this is basically our value proposition, that actually this is being done. It's a simple REST API, and this actually is how the process works. So now the question is, what is actually a reality seal? Well, let me, a reality seal is something what is a representation of a data hash plus some metadata. Let's assume you have one single data which you want to store on the blockchain. And you only not want to store the original data on the blockchain, you just want to store a representation of that. The usual way you would do that is creating a data hash. Hashes are, since decades now, a principle of creating a fingerprint of the data. And you could store that hash on a blockchain and pay the transaction price, the currency of that blockchain. However, if you want to do that at scale, you would have to pay for each of the transactions a single blockchain transaction. That can be rather costly. That is highly inefficient based on the underlying speed of the blockchain. And that is what we do better. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, here's a little way. On the left side, we receive hashes. These are the original documents in any kind of form, what they could be. They could be a PDF, they could be a sensor, IoT sensor data, a financial transaction, right? And what we then receive from our customers is a simple hash of the data. And then we do some, let me call it a bit of magic with it in order to link it to each of the blockchains. That's principally what we do, but everyone who has already experienced and worked with blockchains will say, well, that doesn't easily work, right? Because you have to have the know-how of the blockchains, you have to pay for them. So how is this possible? Well, it is possible. Let me just go one step further here. This is on the top line how we actually, how our process works. The customer on the top left, right? He has documents, he has events. He creates the data hashes. He sends the hashes to a REST API, to a simple connector to us. And then CryptoWork does this orange stuff. And here's a bit the magic, which is patented in multiple ways. We take all of these hashes we receive from a customer. Let's say we receive per hour 1 million of hashes. We bundle them together. And we own, out of that bundle, let's call it a hash of the hashes, right? And that is easy engineering. It's actually not where our patents lie on, because everyone can create a hash of hashes. But what we do is then we create for each of the hashes a seal. Into the blockchain, however, gets only the root hash is anchored. Let me make an example. 1 million hashes reduced to one root hash. So 1 million to 1, only that one root hash is anchored in the blockchain. That makes it very, very efficient for the blockchain, because out of this 1 million transactions, we reduced it to one single transaction. But how can you then make sure, when you want to prove out of this 1 million, you want to prove one single hash? And that is where our patents lie, that in order to prove that, we send you what we call, it's our trademark name, reality seal for each of the hashes received, which you can store on your database, which you can send to your partners or send to the regulator. Everyone who receives then original data from you, or you want to prove in court that these data have not changed, what you need is the original data and a reality seal. And then you can prove with open source software, you recreate the root hash. That sounds a little bit, so that's the bottom line here, recreating the root hash using the reality seal and the hash of the original data. And then you query with open source software any blockchain which you want to, where it is stored in, and you will get actually a green light or a red light. If it's a green light, you have a mathematical proof. This is not software. This is there's a mathematical context behind this, that you can ensure that the original data are the original data. Now imagine you do that at massive scale at very, very low cost. That means that you can do a number of things. First of all, you can handle it for massive number of transactions, massive number of data created. And on the other side, you can connect it to the blockchains of choice required in your legal, governance, regulatory system. It could be the Chinese blockchain behind it. It could be Ethereum. It could be the SEC server. It could be all of the things required for the application, which you select in order to do that. So this is, in a nutshell, what we do. What are we not? We are not another blockchain. We do not store actual data on blockchains. We do not require any blockchain know-how for the application and implementation. Our customers do not need to have cryptocurrencies because they just simply have an API. So we handle all the principal currencies which a blockchain might have, being it specific tokens, being it Ether, being it Bitcoins, whatever it is required. We do not build applications as a company. We provide a platform as a service. So that's my call out also for partners, right? That you just, this is a platform to be used. It's a core technology offering, which is then implemented by others through our implementation partners. What is our secret and multiply patented source? The patents are actually, our core patents are granted. For instance, just for those of you who are techies, any connection of a database to any blockchain is patented through our patents. So we put quite some money into patent applications. Any smart contract on Ethereum is violating our patent, but this is beyond the point. So just to summarize again, we anchor proof of data to multiple DLTs at super high speeds. 100,000 transactions per second, no sweat, no worries. Customers provide only data hashes through REST API. We bundle these hashes into a root hash. We store the root hash into ledgers. We return a proof. We call it reality seal. That, of course, reduces the cost of public blockchains by a factor of thousands. But that comment is for customers irrelevant. Maybe a quick excursion to our business model. Our business model is simply based on a SaaS service and on the number of transactions. It's not based on the cost of the underlying blockchains. These are operating costs of which we carry ourselves, right? So if a customer does a 10 million transaction per month, we have a fair pricing. So for IoT data, for instance, our IoT customers, they pay a typical software as a service license fee, despite the fact that we handle billions of data for them. Yeah, it's not related to the amount of data. So what are the benefits of this process? One does not need to agree on one ledger. One can change the ledger. One can add additional ledgers. If MIT develops a new one, if Ethereum 3.0 or 3.1 might come out, we just add it. Even national blockchains like the Chinese one or the European central bank has a new blockchain, a private blockchain actually. The United Nations has one. We can simply add also these trusted blockchains, whatever is required. It's persistency and immutability by design. The data or the documents remain verifiable without us. That's also important. We are not providing here a technology lock-in that for the verification you need Cryptowork. You can verify in court, for instance, or wherever you need to provide absolute mathematical proof of the data. You can do so without Cryptowork. So if Cryptowork as a startup is whatever, being bought by IBM, so be it, right? You can independently verify it because, well, with one caveat, that the underlying blockchains, or at least one of them, is still in existence, right? That's also something where our standard product is actually we write into Bitcoin and Ethereum, because the likelihood that Bitcoin goes down and Ethereum goes down in the same millisecond is a remote probability. You don't need to share sensitive data or documents because no data are actually processed by Cryptowork, by this technology, because we receive only hashes which we are processed. We do not know whether these are nuclear launch codes or real estate transactions or sensitive IoT data from a self-driving car. We do not know what data are behind, right? So the original data can stay where they are best suited. Our process does not require you to actually transport these data. I think this is probably the rest. The last point here, I'd like to again say, with the reality seals, it's like a notary seal, a digital notary seal, which you can share among business partners, regulators, and auditors, which is also interesting. If you think about here in Germany, there's a big use case in the insurance industry for where a data lake is created. And we actually are solving this problem by creating a reality seal lake. The original data stay where they are, but with the reality seal lake, you can prove the existence of data and prove the immutability of the data without that the data actually had to be transported into an additional data lake. That makes it quite effective and efficient for a number of applications where for a number of security requirements, you will not and do not want to actually let the original data be transported into a data lake. Here's this quickly an example which we are discussing here in Germany in regard to self-driving cars. A simple question, a Tesla, you might all remember this accident 5 years ago. It was in Florida where one of the first accidents of a Tesla drove under a truck, and the question was in court, the driver died, unfortunately, and the question in court was the autopilot on or not? Well, of course, Tesla had log files, but what the judge actually indicated to Tesla was, how do you prove it to me that you didn't manipulate the log file? Well, they settled in off court because Tesla was unable to do that. This is, of course, this is an emerging real problem for the insurance industry. How do you get out of the terabytes of data a car produces evidence of data out of the car in order to make, in the case of an accident, that data provable that they have not been manipulated? And that's what is here symbolized in a very simple way. I think it's self-explanatory. This is here a quick use case description. So you basically create a trust lake, a reality lake of all car sensor data on demand for multiple data integrity verification. And this is something what is implemented by a large system integrator here in Germany in the future. I like to come to an end and then go over to a discussion and questions. Sandhya kindly asked me also, so what are the a bit forward-looking ongoing challenges which we see in this vast blockchain applications? One, of course, is interoperability. There is no international standard for competing blockchain systems, and I don't see one emerging. Ethereum, amazing. There are some very interesting blockchain-specific solutions in the IoT field, absolutely amazing as well. But there is no international standard, nor is there interoperability. The question of privacy is pretty often an issue when you actually store original data on the blockchain. If you do not store the original data on the blockchain, then obviously this is not an issue. But I just want to highlight is that in cases for applications where blockchains are used for storing original data, privacy is an issue. So is then encryption, right? So is then security. Who has access to the original data? Again, the advantage of CryptoWorks approach for solving data immutability and trust in data by only using hash functions of the data, we all eliminate these questions because you cannot go back from the hash to the original data. Scalability, as I mentioned earlier, is an ongoing issue. With Ethereum, it has gotten much, much better, but it's still not highly performant, for instance, in IoT applications. If we talk to about 100,000 of transaction data per second, this is still not yet solved in a reasonable way. The energy consumption, well, I mean, it's a little bit of a marketing argument, and I think it's very, very much used by the anti-Bitcoin cryptocurrency users, which is a fair point, right? Because the computing power by that consensus algorithm is, as we all know, it's vast. in the case of Bitcoin, if somebody wants to use Bitcoin as the underlying blockchain, our bundling mechanism, of course, significantly reduces also the energy consumption per transaction due to our proprietary bundling technology. But it's for me, it's a bit of a moot point. And last but not least, the legal framework is an ongoing mess, right? Because it will happen, of course, like with every regulation, but there is certainly there is a lack of sometimes even national regulation, and also, of course, an agreement on how blockchains should be used on an international basis. A couple of our customers, that's irrelevant here, as a company who has developed this technology in Silicon Valley and in Germany, we are actually looking out for partners. We have so far no Indian partners yet who are interested to actually use this technology. I'm a big fan of India through a good friend of Anand. I have had the sincere pleasure to be multiple times in Bangalore, but that has not yet resulted with, as the last time I was there is actually prior to the COVID times. So I apologize that I haven't been in your country back there for a long time. So I'm looking forward to come back. And we would be very interested to find and discuss with partners and integrators for integrating our solutions into various ecosystems. Of course, we are always open for additional investors. We are a startup. We are US Delaware core. We at some point in time thought about creating an Indian subsidiary, but this is currently not a topic, but we are highly flexible there, whatever specific requirements actually say. So that was in a nutshell what it is. Here's my email address, also my contact data. Right now, there are 2 numbers. Right now, you best would reach me in Germany. That's the 49er number, +49er number. And I'm very much looking forward to your questions, but I also am very much looking forward to an open discussion, because we are all out there for continuous learning. Thank you so much.
Dirk, thank you so much. I've had a couple of conversations with you. Thanks to Anand introducing us. And I think they've been fantastic, because it makes you realize the potential for how blockchains can be used. And a special thanks to Anand, because he was the first one when we set up the FinTech team to say, let's do a joint activity together with the Matrix team. So I will let Anand speak for himself, but just for you to know, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. One is, what is this if it's not a blockchain? I think you may want to just kind of clarify that. Are these foolproof from hacking? That's another question. Does this work with multimedia content? They are, and then of course a few others are there. Something on, it's there in the chat. If we, as you address each question, we can kind of pick it up again. There's something on hashes bundled and hashes done, the logic rationale applied. And they're keen to explore it for SME lending, agri-tech. And therefore, there's an opportunity to kind of see, can this be taken up as well? And will it work for video content? So there's a lot of, I think I see a couple of people who are already blockchain users, but from completely different domains. In fact, the person who's asked about video content is coming from creator economy, performing artists and the like. So there is quite a varied set of questions. Anand, if you want to chip in now before Dirk starts his answers, or feel free to go straight ahead. Guys, I think the line, you can unmute your lines, I believe, but if you're unmuting it, after you ask your question, please go back to mute so that there are no background noises. So Dirk, if you want to start off, or Anand, if you want to chip in.
I'm happy to answer. Anand, do you want to say something, or should I start to try to answer the question in order?
Okay, why don't you just start?
I just get started. And Anand, please chip in anytime. Just feel free to interrupt me anytime. So the question is, what is this if it's not a blockchain? It actually is, let me call it a connector. A connector between data and multiple blockchains. That connector enables you to do, based on your choice, on your customer, on your requirements, to define what blockchains it should be linked to. So in simple words, it is a connector, but it's not only a connector, it's a super connector in a way that it actually makes this underlying blockchains highly performant, much faster in their transaction speed. Whenever there are underlying blockchains which also have cost associated with it, it significantly reduces also the cost of using that blockchain. So if you want to store in Ethereum, or if you want to use Bitcoin, as we all know, a Bitcoin transaction, I think, is currently per transaction $2, $1.50. I don't even know what the latest is, per transaction. You would not do that for your IoT data or your financial transactions because it is simply prohibitive from the performance point of view, but also from a cost point of view. If you have 1 million data times $2, 2 million for verification, it's completely out of line. It's completely unreasonable. We reduce this to a fraction of this. So I think our pricing is, and just don't quote me right now, but to give you an idea, it's probably 0.05 cents per transaction, and there is volume discount. So if it's a very reasonable pricing. What we usually do is with our customers, we try to come with an agreement what the underlying value, of course, of that is. But so I hope that answers a little bit the question. It's a super connector between the original data and sources of truth, meaning blockchains. Maybe one thing I didn't mention. As what we do is this big compression in one root hash, you could even use the central bank, the server into central bank, or a public notary in order to store these root hashes, if that is of benefit in a various legal system, right? Because that is how it even could be applied for. If I don't know who asked this question, but I'm actually basically asked the person if that is a reasonable answer. If not, please jump in, and you can also speak up if you. I don't know if you can, or
it should work. The unmute should work.
Yeah, am I audible?
So just check. Yes.
Yes.
Akash, go ahead.
Yeah. So yes, I am the person who asked the question. So my clarity is related to, is it an API which helps to find the best blockchain to store the data and to make the transaction on the basis of the like cost effectiveness and the transaction speed? Is that so?
It's an excellent question, and it's not.
Okay.
You would be, based on the specific application, would select the blockchains. Our cost structure does not change how many blockchains you have. We have currently 25 APIs to the underlying blockchains. And if you pick 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, the cost per transaction which we charge our customer is not changing. So it really depends on what the requirements for trusted blockchains are. If the application says, I need to have Ethereum and I need to have Bitcoin and I need to have the Indian central bank, for example, right? Or the Indian regulator in Mumbai. I don't know whether it sits in Mumbai or in New Delhi. We would actually use these underlying blockchains or underlying servers based on the specific requirement you have. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of.
So it's your
I think
choice.
I should just reiterate. Somebody has asked, about the currency. This is not currency. This is, you could use it for smart contracts. This is for tracking. Let's say you have a trading floor, all the transactions which are there, the contracts which are there, the trade contracts. That's what it looks like. That's legal. The blockchain technology is legal. Currency is not. This is not necessarily about the currency.
Yes.
Could that be fair, Dirk?
That is absolutely a fair point. Thank you for making that, Santya, the point. I give you the example, for instance, in the US, as you are aware, the SEC requires you to mirror every financial transaction on an SEC server. It's the SEC, they have big muscles, they can demand it, and they do. Each other regulator, like here in Germany, that's called the BaFin, it's the German regulator, and you might all have heard about Wirecard scandal, right, which has been basically was a 2 billion fraud, where 50,000 transactions have been generated in the aftermath of just making then artificial transactions. That was possible because the German regulator and the Singapore regulator did not require what the SEC requires. Well, now the answer could be that Singapore regulator and German regulator basically does the same like the SEC, which is not so easily done in Germany, at least for GDPR data privacy reasons. Transactions cannot be easily mirrored, right? There's a lot of things you need to do. With CryptoWork, you could basically simply take this transaction, you hash it, you use the service, and you get a seal, and that seal will be provided to the regulator. With the seal, the auditor, the regulator, when it wants to audit something, can have 100% proof that this transaction has been a valid transaction as it has been demonstrated. Just an example, right? Yep. Anand.
Yeah, Dirk, shall I just jump in here a little bit? Okay.
Please.
Good. Good evening, everybody. I think this has different value propositions for different players in the business value chain. As Dirk explained, it's a platform as a service. So if you are, and we know that I would call it essentially an assurance service. It gives you an assurance beyond what you would otherwise get in the normal information security within a bank or within an energy company or within a pharma, anywhere there where a foolproof assurance is required. If you are a player, that means if you are a software developer and you are part of the value chain, then this could be a part of the chain. You see, a lot of the, if you look at the fintech market, I'm not a player in the fintech, but you see there are a lot of players who make up the entire chain and each one delivers a certain value. So if you're building fintech solutions and you want to incorporate the digital hashed assurance that CryptoWare provides, and you can incorporate it, and that's a value-added product for you. If that's one proposition. Second is if he's looking for partners to implement this. So you could become an implementation partner and take this value proposition across the market to whichever market that you want, and you could then become another party. So these are some of the things that I can think of, and the entire security space and the assurance space on blockchain, and blockchain is the technology that's obviously has the immense value proposition. And in an age of digital, everything being digital, including, we're going into ONDC, and I know we're not stepped there, but there is going to be a lot of value that you can get with it. In the retail space, for example, I can think of a high-end retailer ensuring that you can track the entire origin from where this apple came from, or where this product came from, right from the farm to the table, and if you want that to be assured, a retail software provider can incorporate that. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Anand. Excellent explanation, very helpful. Are these foolproof from hacking? We are not adding any additional security risk. The hacking question is probably dependent on the security of the underlying blockchain. Therefore, it's another reason why we recommend to use multiple blockchains. However, as you all know, Bitcoin and Ethereum and the various other leading blockchains so far have not been hacked themselves. What has been hacked is the exchange of transactions on the blockchain, but not the underlying blockchain itself. So they're pretty safe, and we do not add any additional security risk. As a matter of fact, we probably make it more reliable because we have multiple blockchains where the hashes are anchored in. Does it work with multimedia content? As I mentioned, yes, it does. We are, if you can generate whatever the multimedia content, if you can generate a hash of it, then it works. So usually if the content is in any kind of format, it can be it does work. Let me, however, make an observation here, which is one of the potentially interesting case. We all living now in a world where AI can manipulate videos, pictures on the fly. It is easily being done. And as a matter of fact, it is done as we speak. What one could do, let me take an example of video. You could actually define that every 30 milliseconds, a frame is actually hashed. When you do that, then the sequence of the video frames is actually provable. We also have a technology which we call gapless sealing, which basically means we can prove that one video frame follows after the previous one, which makes it impossible to actually take snippets out of a video and just reorder the frames to create something new, right? So there are two functions where I see it for a video very important. One is hashing the overall video to prove it's not tampered with. The second one is that you can actually do it on a frame basis. And the third one is you can actually also prove the sequence of the frames. I hope that answers the question for multimedia, because it's very specific. I ask, I apologize now, Rampasad Gundapa. I don't know what's the first and when the last name starts. Apologies for that, but I call you Rampa for the benefit of myself. Please just reach out to me and I'm happy to discuss that with you. How are the hashes bundled up we actually, it's a very, very good question. We actually control the bundle. Usually it's simply, usually we do it once an hour, that we actually take every hashes we have received and then we bundle them together and then we store it. But this can be done specifically to an application. We have one customer who wants to do it much more often. It really depends on the specific customer requirements. We don't really care. However, in all practicality purposes, let's remind us, why are we doing this? We do it to prove to another party that the original data have not been tampered with. That proof to the other party usually does not happen in real time. So if you want to prove something to the regulator, or if you have to go to court, that you prove that this one data have not been tampered with and is the original data, that proof comes sometimes years later, a day later, a week later, but very often not in real time. So therefore, the bundling of the hashes and the storing it in the underlying blockchain in all the applications we have developed together with our partners, there was never a requirement for real time. The question, we are keen to explore an SME lending agriculture. Please share details. Happy to do so. Please reach out to me via email. We will do that. Can this also work with video content? I think I covered that in my explanation with multimedia. Are all such currencies illegal in India? Well, we are not, again, we are not dealing with currencies, right? We are actually dealing with data and linking data to a blockchain of choice. There could be a blockchain where no specific currencies are involved. As I said, it could be the Indian regulator, it could be an Indian private blockchain. So the question whether they are illegal or not legal, I cannot answer. But we certainly, you would have to come up with blockchains, distributed ledger, which of course are accepted in the environment you later on want to do a proof. So the connector helps to find the fastest and cost-effective blockchain. No, it does not. I think I mentioned that. The connector basically connects data to sources of truth. It does not do anything else. You need to define which blockchains they are. If you do not define it and use the service, it will be Bitcoin and Ethereum. But we do not, that's our standard offering, right? But usually the customer needs, or you need to make that choice. We can bundle hashes and send to, what is the advantage of sending? We can bundle hashes. Yes, you can do so and send it to the blockchain. What is the advantage of sending to CryptoWork? Basically, it's also a very good question. Basically, it's that we give you as what we call a seal for each of the blockchains, because it would be very difficult if you would like to prove in the method you are describing, just bundle hashes and store it on the blockchain, then you can prove that the bundle has not been manipulated. But if one transaction in the bundle is manipulated, which one is it? So you need to have an individual way for each of the hashes to be able to prove the immutability of each of the hashes of each of the underlying data. Do the various blockchains need to have an agreement with CryptoWork? No. we basically, there usually is an open API. CryptoWork pays the transaction costs with, so anyone who wants to use Bitcoin or Ethereum, it is not required. If there is a very specific public blockchain, sorry, excuse me, correction. If there is a very specific private blockchain, where the private blockchain has specific regulatories, then CryptoWork indeed needs to cooperate with that blockchain. We usually have not seen this yet, right? But that could be theoretically the case, that there is a proprietary ledger where, for instance, you are the owner of that ledger and you want to make sure that anyone who uses your blockchain as a source of truth has an agreement, then we would have to have this agreement. For all the typical, practical, public and known blockchains, such an agreement is not required as they have an open API. And you as a customer wouldn't even see that, right? Because you have one API to CryptoWork technology, and CryptoWork handles all the rest to the various blockchains. Is it a super crypto solution? I think it's super, but it's not crypto. And I think I explained it. Can you please explain the basic concept of digital twins? Ah, yes, very good point. And how blockchain account from support and benefit it. Well, a digital twin is basically a digital representation of a physical good or a physical process or something. You usually create a digital twin of something. That digital twin is, we treat it as a data. And you can actually, if you want to prove that digital twin, yes, you can. Right? So it's the same thing. It's a data which you can hash, and you can use the CryptoWork API to actually create a proof of the digital twin. Are these blockchains public or private? The answer is, as I explained, both. We actually we like public blockchains. Why? Because that's where our technology is having its largest advantages, right? Because it also creates, Ethereum is a very well-known blockchain, but we also sometimes add a private blockchain if the parties do require actually such kind of installation. What we also have seen, which is interesting, take an existing application where the blockchain, where there is a process and you transfer this process on a private blockchain with smart contract execution. We think it's great. Do not change it. Do not give it up. Continue with this. But if you want to prove whatever happens there in that process on that private blockchain in a legally and international acceptable way, and or to non-trusted, maybe not yet known parties, then just install the CryptoWork service on the side in addition to your additional smart contracts and handling of the original data. What is the nature and maturity of discussion regarding future proving? This is Madame Dangavelu. This is a very interesting question. We are actually working on this one. the maturity of the discussions, it's, well, let me handle the future-proofing question. The future-proofing is, of course, something which we do not control. It depends the future-proof of an underlying blockchain. For instance, what happens if Ethereum 2.0 stops and is migrated to Ethereum 3.0? What happens if an underlying blockchain does a fork? And this, sometimes they speak from hard forks, where there is a forced fork, right? What we basically do, we actually handle these to the superseding blockchain. We connect it. So let's assume you have forks into 3 forks. We actually write our root hashes in all 3 forks and wait for the winner, right? And then eliminate the rest. So in that sense, our technology is as much as future-proof as you can imagine, which is, as I in my example explained, in the how we handle forks in the underlying single blockchain. But as we use multiple blockchains, that's another way of future-proofing, that you use multiple blockchains instead of one single one. There is no crypto work standard in a way. We believe that in this current world, Bitcoin and Ethereum provide the maximum number of independent nodes globally. But that might change, right? If there is a new, as I said, a new MIT developed, or whoever develops it, if there's a new blockchain consensus algorithm coming up in the near future, we would just add it and add it as an additional source of truth. We are following these ISO TC 307 standards, but in our way, we are still believing that this is very much an emerging regulatory environment and not yet regulated, certainly not yet on a global and international basis. How will the reality seal help a regulator? If you're a regulator or a judge and someone represents to you original data and claims this is the original document, and he has a reality seal with it, you can even in court prove with a hand calculator if it's required. It's probably every engineer or mathematical first semester student can do so. So if it's required, you can do it even by hand to prove that the reality seal corresponds to the original data. Excuse me. So how does it help? Therefore, it provides a mathematical proof that the data have not been altered, not been changed, and indeed are the original data. What you need is the seal, the reality seal, and the original data. We, of course, provide open source software in order to make that you do not need to do a hand calculator calculation for that. But the most important thing is it's math, it's not software. You do not need crypto work, right? What you do need is, of course, the underlying blockchain, whatever is still being in existence, at least one of the many you have chosen. How do you plan to set up the incubator in India? I have no idea. I need your advice.
No, I think it comes from the fact that you set up, one of the largest German incubators in the valley. So I think the question was coming from there.
Oh, I understand. Well, as maybe that's a little bit of an excursion as part, maybe, thank you, Sandhya. Now I understand the question. As part of my work with the German government and giving back to my old country in Germany, when I lived in Silicon Valley, I created what is called German Accelerator. It's basically an incubator helping startups from Germany to develop a US go-to-market strategy, to develop it, to test it, and to execute it. And we created a network of 100 mentors in doing so. I think similar concepts, I think with TiE in Silicon Valley, I have a number of friends there who are part of the TiE community in Silicon Valley. I think that already there's something in existence. I don't know whether there is a specific government program. If you want to have best practices and my learnings from it, I'm more than happy to have an exchange. Whoever asked these questions, what are the do's and don'ts, what I experienced to do so. And maybe in a nutshell, never underestimate the complexity of a government, right? It's we entrepreneurs are a bit faster. But happy to answer your question, Sonia, you might have, if this is what we can do. So we can do that offline, I think, because most of this is a very specific and most welcomed question.
Yeah, I think we should, when you're coming to India, we should consider possibilities.
Absolutely. A potential use case could be to use your platform to verify the authenticity of degrees and transcripts submitted by students as part of their applications. Absolutely. Very often, the question comes on what's the granularity? Is it the transcript? Is it a word on a file? So that's we actually can go down to a granularity, which is not only certificates, which is not only a transcript, but that's certainly very well possible to actually do that. My knowledge, however, is that this is an application which is interesting to develop it for a global basis, because I don't think the problem is actually an Indian problem. It's actually a global problem. So if any university, let's call it the University of Bangladesh, right? Their students want to do a postdoc in Berkeley. How does Berkeley make sure that these documents are actually coming from a trusted, not changed source of truth? So this is actually could be done very well on blockchains, on a number of blockchains, or even on a single blockchain, which is acceptable to India, to Bangladesh, to the United States system, and maybe to the French or European. Yes, can be done. It's a good application. Yeah, Global Film Festival. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I'm happy, Sonia, this is another interesting question regarding a film festival. I need to understand more about it. Please reach out to me, because the content of a film. Let me give you another example. It's not a film related, but it's related to the question of NFTs. I'm wondering that nobody asked me about NFTs, but maybe because this is also, of course, very often also a topic. Are we are we providing, is this another NFT? No, it's actually not, right? But in regard to the film festivals, imagine you have a song and you want to have copyright of a song. Imagine if you take frames of the songs, of the notes of the song, every, whatever, 30 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds or whatever, and you actually seal the sequence, gapless sealing of a song. That would be a very easy way that you actually, first of all, can make sure that nobody is infringing and stealing music frames, which are then violating the license agreements you might have. So there's a lot of things on the move there. Many people work on this already. We could provide a much easier solution than to do that with NFTs. Why? Or why wouldn't I recommend NFTs? I love NFTs, but they are pretty expensive, and sometimes, therefore, it's cost prohibitive to use NFTs for everything. I think we went through all the questions.
We did.
Are there any more?
We're well past the hour. So, okay, I should just call out, there was, I was the one who was typing because I had a message from somebody who clearly was calling out that the regulator, Indian regulator, does not support any form of crypto. There is definitely a challenge, and I, coming from the banking sector, totally understand that. But I think a lot of people don't understand that the blockchain technology is used for so many other things, smart contracts, and there are lots of, the private blockchains which are not currency related. And I think there's room for us to learn a little more about that. If any of you want to chat about it, ping me on SMS if you don't use WhatsApp. We will set up a session for a discussion on that topic. I don't know whether Anand is still there, but Dirk, sincere thanks from the collective. Yeah. Thanks to Anand, I think we wouldn't have kind of known to reach out to you by ourselves, but it's been a fabulous session. More than 60% stayed online, despite going almost half an hour over time, which is quite unusual for these kind of sessions. Genuine thank you. Anand, over to you for anything else to add.
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Dirk, for the session as well as the detailed and exhaustive Q&A. So I won't talk about the session as such, but apart from being a technology entrepreneur, Dirk has a background of the entire ecosystem of startups. So he's been a venture capitalist. He's run incubators. He has his own startups. So I think he understands the entire cutting-edge technology startup scenario very well. And I first came across him in the Valley during those days. And therefore, I think it's very important. Some of these applications may be a little ahead of the time, in that sense. But when you innovate, quite often you end up being ahead of the time. And therefore, it's hard for the market to get to the stage of hype cycle where this really big takes off in that sense. But I think most people in the blockchains see that it will take off. Apart from his technology and VC, and he's been working in the financial sector quite a bit, so he has the right background for this. I also just wanted to add that apart from being both a German and a US citizen, he also holds a commercial pilot license, okay, to fly aircrafts, okay. So with that, we will probably close my brief introduction or even sharing a few thoughts about Dirk. So thank you once again, Dirk. Over to you. Sandhya.
Absolutely.
Thank you
And
so
I
much,
think-
Dirk.
Thank you all. It was
Don't-
really a sincere pleasure, and we will set up something if somebody wants to meet with me. It's probably now the second week in February. Sandhya and Anand, we will be in touch to have an exchange. I will be most likely spend most of the time in Bangalore. I know that you are across the country, but I think I will be briefly, I think, as Sandhya suggested, I think in Mumbai or New Delhi, we will discuss this all. In the meantime, the best greetings from Germany. It's a small world. Connection was brilliant. Thank you so much. It's a true pleasure. And I greet you from here. Bye-bye.
Thank you.